All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started since it's 5 after. Hopefully, we'll have a couple more people from the New River team join. But thank you to Emily from Cabin Creek and Tommy from New River for joining us today. Tommy, you unmuted. Do you know if they're coming or not?
Yeah, I couldn't hear anything for a second, and then I was like, oh, I know why, it's connected to my Bluetooth. So if you were talking to me, I apologize. It was in my vehicle and I was inside, so.
No worries. Nope. Do you know if Andrew or Natasha is coming today from New River?
I am not sure. I haven't even seen either of them today.
Okay.
I've been, busy. I can send them a text message and see real quick.
Okay, yeah, sure. That's great. I appreciate it.
Yep, I'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, in the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started. We got a short presentation from myself and Stacy Wanger. I'll let her introduce herself here in a minute to the group. She's new to the group. And then we also then we'll do the breakout rooms like we've been doing. And this will really be kind of thinking about the next session, which is the presentations by Cabin Creek and New River. So we'll get into any questions like that. If it ends up just being Emily and Tommy, we could even think about staying in together if you guys want to, and just kind of going back and forth. We can do that as well. We can just decide after the presentation. So play it by ear. But first things first, Stacy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Stacy Wanger. I'm the Assistant Director for the West Virginia Practice-Based Research Network. So I've been working with these folks for a while, but haven't been able to jump on these calls. So it's great to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. I will go ahead and share the slides and we'll get into it. And if there are any questions or anything like that as we're talking, please unmute and interrupt or use the chat function. Give me 1 second here. All right. Is everybody able to see the slides there? Some head nods. Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right. So we are in the final part of the PDSA cycle. We're in the ACT part. So we're going to go over that today, kind of what's involved in this part of the cycle, kind of what to look next, and also think about sustainability and evaluation, which I believe is the learning objectives. So yeah, we'll get the components of the cycle. We're going to learn to develop the sustainability plan and communicate accomplishments, and hopefully to make sure that your project or what you have to change in your project will be sustainable for the long run. Okay, we've seen this slide a couple of times now in these sessions. The model for improvement. We saw the last session where we talked about, the PDSA cycle and then trying to answer these questions above and feeding it into the cycle. And so one thing to remember when we've talked about the PDSA cycle is that a lot like this quote, it's taking on challenge. It's a lot like riding a horse, isn't it? If you're comfortable with it, you're probably doing it wrong. So it's okay to run into those rough patches. Oh, yeah, Tommy, hand raise, go for it.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you by just interrupting you, but Natasha just sent me a text back. She will be jumping on in about a couple minutes, so she'll be here any minute, just so you know.
Perfect. Appreciate it, Tommy.
All right. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So the whole point of the PDSA cycle is to try things, right? In the end, you're trying to make improvements, whatever they may be, but sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. And this is really what the ACT thing is about. So it's okay to feel that, discomfort, or maybe like, it didn't work out the way you thought it was going to. Okay, so 3 main components under the ACT part of the PDSA cycle. So thinking about your change project, your quality improvement project, you're going to adopt it, right? If it's brand new, it's a brand new change. We're going to do follow-up calls. We're going to do new intake form, whatever it may be. You're going to adopt that new change. You're going to implement it however that should go. All right. Then, though, after you've run through the cycle, you've checked the data, which we'll get into a little bit more later. Then you might have to do the second part, which is adapt it. And that means maybe you found that you need to add a new component or a new question to your intake form, or you found something else out that needs to be added. That's kind of a small change to it. That's reasonable that you can add to it to hopefully give you the results that you want. So you're adapting it to your needs after you've kind of run it a little bit to see what's going on. And then the third option, which is an option that, we kind of see as all that, it's bad, is that you abandon it, right? It doesn't work. And you've tried it to tweak it and all those things, and it still doesn't work. That's okay. You should stop that change. Don't waste your time. Don't, get on to the next cycle, stop implementing the change, move on to the next cycle, try something else. It's okay to find out that that it didn't work. I mean, I think we can speak from our experience with the new groups that we've added. There have been parts of it where we're like, oh man, we can't do that anymore. We just got to do something else. It didn't work, and you just have to come to that realization. And that's done by just constantly checking on it, looking at the data, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. Okay, so evaluation is very important. And this is, we use this in a general term. This means a lot of things. We've talked about ad nauseum, looking at your hard data, right? Looking at your, whatever it's the patients, their no-show rates, whatever that might be, that's your quantitative, data. And you got to be thinking about what are your project outcomes, right? What do you want to know? Is it going to increase retention? Is it going to decrease no-shows? All those different, overarching questions. That's what you want in your evaluation plan. And then how are you going to collect that data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative data? Hopefully it's a little bit of both. That's always helpful. And then also be thinking about these other questions about who's being impacted. We think about it impacting, the patients that we serve, which is usually the number one thing. But how has it impacted your team? The other, staff and docs on your team, what has it, have there been any kind of unintended consequences to the change that you didn't see coming? Lessons learned, obviously, that's a big one. What can you do to change and make it better? But then also a financial impact. If anything around your project has a financial component, it's always great to track that in some way, whether it can be return on investment, decrease in costs, things like that. And then like I said, we've talked about this a lot. You have to always go back to your evaluation plan and the data points you're looking at, constantly checking the data, updating it, making sure you're on the right trajectory, or if you need to change or abandon it completely. Any questions before I turn it over to Stacy? Okay.
All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the sustainability plan. So as you've gone through all of these steps and you find something that really, really works, you have to also make sure that it's going to be sustainable over time. And one thing I think we run into seeing this a lot is in staffing. So if only one person knows how to do something and that person leaves or gets reassigned, then it falls apart. So you have to kind of make sure that this is built in from the beginning, so you know how to expect these things. And there's going to be bumps along the way, but the earlier you talk about it and include it into your project idea, the better it's going to be, and the more you're going to be prepared later on. So developing this plan gives you some options as you go through. So there's a couple things to think about is who could be the sustain leader. And that's the person that really can make sure that things are still running. So as things change over time and maybe people get moved around and resources get changed, there's that one person to just do that check-in every now and then and make sure that things are still sustaining among the change that you've implemented. What are those changes that you want to see? So as things go along, there could be some tweaks, and you go back to that those steps where you want to modify it a little bit. That's okay, but the end result is the part that made things better. Is that still being sustained over time, that main change? Then once you've identified those things, you have to make sure that you are getting the information to make sure that that's still working for you. So what is that measure that you're going to be looking at, and what are the things in place to make sure that you're getting that metric? So you could find that what you need is not the information that you have access to. So what that really requires is a sit down discussion with the team to find out, how can we get that information? Is there another way to go about it? Or is this something that really kind of prohibits any long-term effects? So you really look at, what are those systems in place? What can we use that's really at our fingertips, that's easily accessible, and really watch and see this change over time, how it works for the clinics and for the project that you're implementing, how it works for other things, like Jay mentioned, as it's touching other things in the clinic and other patients and providers, and how is that all working? You just always have to go back to that sustainability plan and make sure that all of that is still leading toward what your goal is. And then the next part is looking at the communications plan. And so there's different ways to take that information and send it out. And I say that very broadly for a reason. So you have publications and presentations that you can do that really provides that information to the scientific community and to the academic community and to fellow providers and clinics, really what you've done. And you want to make that so they look to you as being the guide and the leader in whatever you've decided to implement. That gives everyone else a basis on which to start. But that may not be the same type of information that would be easily translated and discussed among the community members, patients, other staff members in your clinics. So then there's other options that you can do. You can do flyers of information. Always have a website that has some information, and you can be creative on how you want to adapt that into your existing website. You can always post the flyers on the website, so you have multiple ways you can view those flyers. Social media outlets obviously are really popular. They're always changing over time and how you can be interactive with other folks outside of your organization. If there's internal clinical communications, a way that you meet on a regular basis or have information that's shared among all the staff members, that's a great opportunity to get everyone involved and know exactly what you're doing. And then, of course, just working and remembering to communicate across the project team itself. So you want to make sure that that is always a communication. And, you know, this team has been through several different project ideas, and we communicate on a very regular basis because things always change, and something that might be working and going well for a while might hit a hiccup. I mean, the biggest hiccup of all recently has been COVID, and how that played into how the projects were going beforehand. But there's always things that come up. There's little things that might pop up, you know, and just making sure that you talk through them is really the biggest thing, because once you've been able to communicate that even with the project team, then you can open it up and get other people's input too. But you want to just make sure that that core group stays in really close communication. I think that's the last one, right? Yeah.
Okay, so any questions on that? This is really your launching off point, right? You know, you're going to implement it, you're going to do it, you're going to see what happens. Okay. So I think with the group we have, we'll just stay in one room here when we'll have a conversation. And we'll just kind of go over, as you can see on the slide, this is really prep for the next time we meet, which will be our last time, and we'll go over the presentations for the groups. So we can have a discussion about any lingering questions you might have, what to expect from the presentations next week. They are not to be intimidating or anything like that at all. They should be pretty easy for you guys at this point, I think. And anything else that has come up. Now, Sheena, you told me that Jen Boyd said that there was maybe some updates from New River. We maybe want to kick it off with that. If Tommy and Natasha, if you have any of that information, or if we need to go back to Jen Boyd and say, hey, what the heck?
Cash, you want to? You're probably more equipped to talk about it than me.
Just with our weekly groups, is that what you're talking about? Sorry, I've been out with the flu
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're talking about, the weekly groups.
this week, so it's been real fun.
Yeah, the weekly groups, what we talked about last Thursday.
Our incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have seen a fluctuation in patients keeping their appointments with the incentive, which we've had like chapstick, gum, candy bars, and things of that nature. And they have actually we've only had 2 patients miss 2 appointments, which I'll have to go back and look at the rest. But it's a significant change in the last 4 weeks that we have definitely seen just because of this slight incentive. Next week we start to go, or this week rather, we are doing bigger incentives. So we're going to see what that entails. And hopefully we'll see a bigger improvement. But this far, we have definitely seen different behaviors.
That's great. What is the next like level of incentive? What do you like? What do you think that is?
So
What you're gonna offer?
this last 4 weeks, we've done like $1 incentive kind of thing, and we're going to move up to like a $3 to $5 incentive. So I'll just have to go and see what little things that is. But also, like when one of our patients were like, "Oh no, I missed an appointment, so I don't get an incentive." We're like, "No, sorry," and they got skipped over, and they got real in their feelings about that. So they were, you could definitely see something inside of them like, well, I kind of want to do this just for that little incentive. And you could see just the look on their face, how much they appreciated that. So I don't know, I'll just have to go to the store and look for things between the, $2 to $5, just that one step up. And then in the next level, we'll go a bit higher.
And then another thing that Tash and everybody had talked about, we have a bunch of stuff like t-shirts and stuff, and Tash came up with that idea to, just with New River t-shirts, and we have some book bags, and it's just extra stuff that we have, and it would be good gifts for them for the incentives. So Jennifer Boyd was on board with that. That was a little tongue twister there. So the incentives have kicked up with that too. And what they're saying after the meeting is interesting. One thing I noticed with our group of patients is if one feels left out, that is kind of like, man, this is, everybody got a candy bar but me, so it's kind of like you don't want to be left out. Like, and then the fear of being left behind is creeping in. I had a conversation with one of our patients on the drive home, because I take them home in the New River van, and they said, well, I don't want to get left behind. I don't want to be the last one in the weekly group because everybody's going to start passing. So the pressure of being left behind, these gifts are a sidebar to the fact that it's enough motivation that people are gaining momentum, and the ones that are kind of teetering or struggling are having that fear of being left behind, that FOMO, So it's kind of cool to see, like Tash said.
That's great. That's great. You guys are well on your way then, it sounds like. That's awesome. Any follow-up questions from the rest of the group about that? Okay. Emily, not to put you on the spot, but any updates from you guys? You guys had a pretty well thought out plan. Maybe you could just give a brief kind of run through of what you guys are thinking about implementing for the rest of the group.
Sure. So what we're looking at is our CARP or MAT patients seeing a primary care provider within the last year. And so Bridget is our change leader. So we identified the change team and we met for the first time as a team. And then we went, well, first Bridget did some background data. She identified 39 patients in 3 different groups. 14 of those had seen a primary care provider in the last year. So we have a decent population to work with. So we met as a change team and we went through the nominal group technique to identify our first change idea to test. And that's where we left it.
I think the premise was that you're trying to the rate of your MAT patients seeing their PCP was very low, correct?
Yes.
Wasn't, and so they're trying to get an uptick in that, and hopefully that'll by going and seeing their PCP will also help them in their MAT program. That's kind of the premise.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
No, it's okay. Yeah, and Bridget, who's usually on the calls, but who's on vacation, yeah, they have been thinking about this plan for, it seems like they've had this in their heads for a while about doing something like this, and have done the data part, which we all know Mark talks about. So, yeah.
We got to have data.
I have a question about that. Can I follow up? I think that is great because I think holistic care is so important in every population, but particularly in this population. So your goal, your rate you're looking at is percentages of patients seeing primary care in a year period. Is that what you said? An annual visit?
Yes.
So then your data, your collection will have to span a little bit, because if you're giving them a 12-month period, it will be an ongoing kind of project, I presume. How did your nominal group technique thing, like what kind of ideas spurred from that?
We all had similar ideas, and then I think what we got stuck was some of them seemed to encompass the others. And so we tried to be very specific and not ball it into one comprehensive solution.
Yeah, that seems to happen. That's happened with us. And sometimes we've combined some of the elements. If an element seemed like way too simple to do, but it was an alignment with other interventions, we combined them. But that's definitely been my experience. You technically could make this ginormous intervention and test it all at once, or build on interventions as you test it and rapid cycle evaluate. Then you always have this backup parking lot of ideas that you could pull in as you determine if your other interventions have worked or not.
Yeah, and we agreed that some of them might just happen naturally when we try the first.
Yeah. And some things you'll know right away, like, this isn't working like we thought it was going to work. And then some will be like, wow, this is super successful, but I think we've nailed it and we could add, other things on. So I think that's great that you have that perspective.
Any other comments from the group? Quiet group. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
let me go.
No, I was just trying to navigate the cell phone Zoom thing for the first time here, and it's been interesting.
Hey, welcome to we do a lot of these echo sessions, and you would be surprised what happens on people's cell phones, whether they got it in their cup holder and they're driving. You can see the video because they don't turn the video off, or all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to hit mute and then I'm hitting video and I'm like, what is going on? I can't figure out what's going on. Am I on? Am I off? I don't know.
Yeah, your video is not on, and let me tell you something. As long as you don't hold it up to your ear with your video on, so we get an ear exam for you, you're ahead of the game. 'Cause that is
I
happening.
did that. I was hoping
So-
the video wasn't on.
Okay,
I was like,
yeah,
I
no,
don't
you're
hear
good.
nothing. I
You're
don't hear
good.
nothing.
You're all right.
Especially in the beginning when I was on the Bluetooth, I was like, wait a minute. Why don't I see people's mouth move? I don't see no word. I don't hear words. And I put it up to my ear. I'm like, God, I hope the video isn't on.
Yeah, you were good. You're good. You can still
Good
go.
deal.
You can still go to your PCP and get the full exam. We didn't see anything.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I get to save face. So when I come
Yeah.
back, when Tash comes back, there's not a picture of my eardrum in the
Right.
lobby.
In the recording or anything. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, hey, Tom, look at this picture of me hung up of you. So it's your good side.
Well, in prep of next, so in 2 weeks, we'll ask you guys to kind of give your kind of all-encompassing presentation. It's only about 10 minutes. All right. And it just kind of walk us through kind of what Emily, what you were talking about, and Natasha, how you kind of you guys met, you did the nominal group technique. This is what we came up with. This is where we're at in this point in time, and also be thinking about, what questions do you have? Where do you think your weaknesses might be? Like, where do you feel like not so comfortable about? Maybe it's in data collection or what to collect or something like that. Be thinking about those questions because we are going to, everybody's going to be in the group just like this. And so you'll be able to pick everybody's brain, whether you've been with them in the breakout sessions or not. And that's going to encompass the entire session. So we really want to try to have a robust discussion around those. So you guys feel comfortable moving forward, when we're not meeting regularly, although that's not to say you guys can't reach out to any of us at any point, but we'll kind of be, setting you free from the nest, right? Spread the wings and see what happens. So use that project charter that we've gone over the past couple of weeks. You can use that as a guide, but by no means do you have to have slides or anything like that. We can just talk about it and you can present it, whatever you feel most comfortable doing.
That works. I should be diving into the data this week when I get back to work.
Yep.
And so please give me pointers when I deliver as to what I am doing right or wrong. So that way I can collect correct data.
Sure. Absolutely. We can do that. Sheena, you unmuted. Go ahead.
And I had sent New River like their PDSA cycle that we had worked on in our breakout room, and I think that was a couple weeks ago. And we talked about some different data points that you may want to collect. I think I can't remember everything that was in that now, but as you start over the next week and a half, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. We're here to help you. So email us if you have anything and we can see if we can help in any way or even set up a Zoom call if needed.
Okay, that works. I'm sure I'll be typing away this week.
And Emily, the same goes for you.
Yep.
Just feel free. If I'm not as familiar with your project, obviously, but feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions or even just want some guidance on anything. We're happy to help in any way we can.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure when Bridget gets back, we might collectively have some questions.
Sure.
And we'll reach out.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, I mean, if there's not any more comments or questions, I mean, we can adjourn. I'm not going to keep you guys on here just to have you on. I know everybody's busy and it's probably it's Monday. So if there isn't anything else, we will adjourn and meet in 2 weeks on the 21st. So November 21st, we'll wrap it up. Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.